Timothy. We have so much to talk about. But before we get into the obvious, we should shout out and keep all of this in perspective, that there are still Ukrainians dying, and there is a horrible war that has created 10 million refugees, and it's 10 million people displaced, over 2 million refugees into other places, but 10 million people without homes in a nation of 35 million is disastrous. So let's keep everything in perspective. But this morning, as we were preparing to record this, the news broke that Bruce Willis will be stepping away from acting because he has been diagnosed with aphasia, which is a degenerative cognitive affliction I had never heard of. But near as I understand it, it progressively destroys your ability to both speak and to understand speech, and you retreat into a world of your own, an inescapable bubble of your own. And it's not, Alzheimer-y in the sense that you lose connection with the world and forget things. You just can't interface with the world, and that's just devastating and horrible. And we're sending, the reality is not fair. So we send our hopes and prayers and thoughts and very best wishes to Bruce Willis and his loved ones at this time.
Indeed, it's a hell of a thing. I am familiar with it somewhat. My late wife, was a psychiatric nurse. Was all kinds of RN, and she took care of aphasia patients back in the day. It seems like sort of an Alzheimer kind of thing, but as you say, no, you're there. And kind of in the same way with Parkinson's, you're there. But you cannot, your body and all that kind of stuff. Only, what did we just say? You just told me how old he is, Bruce.
He's 67. I think he's 67.
Now I'm feeling aphasia. You literally just told me that not 2 minutes ago. 67 years old. I'll be 61 in a couple of months. So all these things, they sit right on top of me. And of course, Bruce, and you're right, big picture, but we're in the movie industry. This is our industry.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we speak of. And Bruce is one of those guys that, for you and me, he came into the industry and became a movie star, television star, moonlighting, all that, and a movie star. And we have experienced effectively his entire career. He has been, from like I said, a little bit before I even became a professional. He has been this fixture as a movie star in my life. Him, Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, so the news is a hell of a thing. For years now, we've been poking at Bruce about making those Bruce Willis movies that he's come to make over the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, where he would pretty much just go in for the payday.
Yeah.
Walk around, slap somebody around, shoot a few people, and say something die hardy, and go home. And I, look, I never get mad at actors if that's where they decide to go. If they grow into that and decide, look, I'm going to get paid, I'm going to take care of the kids, I'm not going to concern myself with that Oscar ceremony anymore. Bruce ain't been to the Oscars in 15 years. I ain't mad.
You got to keep working. You got to keep working. You got to stay sane. I used to make fun of Shelley Winters because she went from being a sex bomb to a great character actress, winning and getting nominated for Academy Awards, eventually to being that old lady who wore a muumuu and played the evil sorority mom in satanic sorority movies.
and played her damn well.
Played him so well. And, I was privileged to meet her on a very, very funny press day for The Pickle, Paul Mazursky's The Pickle.
Oh, yeah.
Which was, I think, it might have been her last movie, but it was a very funny press day, and she was just delightful.
Yeah. So Bruce, wishing Bruce the best.
Yeah.
Not gonna quote Bruce anymore.
Let's migrate to that of which we shall not speak. The otherwise known as the Sunday's 94th Annual Academy Awards, or as some will have been chosen to characterize it, the slap heard round the world. Yeah. I will just preface this by saying that it was already the worst Oscar show I've ever seen in my lifetime before that happened. That simply gained it immortality. So
it was a terrible show, wasn't it?
Oh,
And I don't, and you know what? I don't mind talking about that first. Let's set Big Willie and Chris over here for a second. Everybody's been talking about it for 3 days. That Oscar program, all of that crap withstanding, was terrible. The writing was terrible. The skits were terrible. The hosts were terrible. I don't blame Regina because she shouldn't have been hosting in that context at all. If you're going to hire these two comedians, let them all be comedians or none of them be comedians. But nevertheless, she was forced out of her bailiwick. It doesn't make any difference. Still terrible.
I agree completely. Yeah.
The two comedians were also terrible, mostly because the writing was terrible. The writing for them. The writing for everything that every person who stepped onto in front of a microphone that evening that had to say something non-contemporaneously, that had to do a bit. All of that writing was terrible. Literally, not a single bit, skit, or speech, not written by a person themselves. All terrible. Every word.
Nothing landed. And with the 8 categories which were presented beforehand and then edited in truncated fashion to save a few seconds, the show still came in at 221 minutes. So I don't know. And then they played Bruno, which isn't even a nominated song. They performed that whole thing. Mm-hmm. And by minute 34, they had still only given out 1 award. They went more than half an hour before they actually got to a second award. And I was thinking back, those old Gil Cates shows in the 80s, those things would have within the first half hour, you've given out 3 awards.
Yeah.
You got to get right into it. You really got to get right into it. And I am not a fan of Will Packer. I'll be honest. I think he's, one of those hacky crank 'em out producers that Hollywood just leans on and doesn't really put a lot into it. But I'm not going to.
And this is out of his bailiwick again. Yeah, he's out. He's out of his bailiwick.
So was last year. Steven Soderbergh's last year was almost as terrible. And Soderbergh did that whole intro, that walking through it. That didn't work either. So here's the thing.
This is not what you people do. This is not what you people do.
They should get not a film producer, get a Broadway producer. Get someone who does live shows, who does live variety, who does stadium shows, somebody who knows how to put this kind of an affair on. That's someone who should produce the Oscars. And the problem was Will Packer was handed a thankless task. We all know that ABC was leaning hard on the Academy, giving them the ultimatum. So ABC had a lot of demands. We need a certain number of commercial breaks. They had way too many, I got to add. Way too many commercial breaks eventually. The first one came at like 40 minutes, and then it was like every 10 minutes or 15 minutes thereafter. It's way too many. Fewer commercials, charge more for them. That's a better way to go. And they said, okay, 50% increase over last year. Okay, that still makes it the second lowest rated show ever. I mean, it lost 50% from the previous year, so it regained 50% from last year. You're halfway back to the third lowest rated Oscar cast of all time. And you and Mark and Ray and I had a little online discussion about this, and Ray was making the point that everything is losing audience.
This is true,
and I get that, but at the same time, we've got to figure out where, all of these things don't have the same audience. Like if the Oscars are losing audience and the MTV and Movie Awards are losing audience, those are two different audiences. So they're both losing audiences in the same proportion, but for different reasons. The Grammy audience is not necessarily the Oscar audience. So audiences are going somewhere, presumably online or something else, or they have other things to do. But specific to the Oscars, I think you have to look at the history of the Academy Awards. For 45 years, they had a reliable audience of between 35 and 45 million people that popped over 50 twice for E.T. and Titanic. But otherwise, 35 to 45, really reliable. A pretty reliable $32 to $35 million base of movie fans who were going to come every year no matter what. And anything above that was gravy. And we lost that 6 years ago. That collapsed 6 years ago, and it's been further collapsing every year. So somewhere we've got another 15 to 20 million viewers who want to watch the Oscars, but are not. And that's what concerns me.
I'll split the difference with you. So of that 35 to 45 that you're talking about, I would say 5 to 7 or 10 of that actually left. And just like the Country Music Awards and the Emmys and every other award show, literally are not doing that anymore. Or better put, perhaps never grew into doing it in the first place, right? which is where I don't think it's so much that a whole bunch of people stopped watching the Oscars as that a generation never grew into watching the Oscars or many of these other things, which means that 35 to 45 is probably now more of a legit, 25 to 30, 30 to 35. So, or better put, it's a matter of a group of people who never came to watching these programs in the first place, not just the Oscars, right? So we had this group of people who didn't go away. I still watch the Oscars. You still watch the Oscars. Those of us who do. But over the last, 30 years that you and I have been doing this, a whole two generations of people have come along, and a chunk of those people never came to engaging in these things. The Oscars, the Grammys, the Emmys, the Country Music Awards, they just never started doing it in the first place. And so that's the question that I think. I think that's where a chunk of these audiences went. They didn't go, they never came. And that I think is going to be a more difficult thing to engage. An audience that has never watched the Oscars needs to be enticed to watch the Oscars.
That's a great, and that's
we're going to watch until we're out of here. But I got a 30-year-old goddaughter in there. She has never really watched the Oscars. She watched the year Black Panther was nominated.
Yeah.
Never really, not really.
Well, I talk guys my age, a bunch of my old buddies. One of them was having a housewarming party on Sunday, and I said, "You realize that's the Oscars, right?" And they didn't know, they didn't care. And these are people my age.
That's two
hits.
Used
to watch.
That's two hits.
So it's that's rough. That's all a rough call. I mean, here for me, it was already off on a bad foot when they started with a music video of Beyonce. Now, Beyonce in the room performing live in the Kodak Theater. That's something special.
Yeah.
I can watch Beyonce doing a music video on a rooftop or in some other. I can watch that anytime I want. So that's not special. And even though I didn't care for having Queen perform a couple of years ago when they opened up that first show that Kevin Hart was supposed to host, and then they tanked that. Okay, fair enough, it's Queen, but at least they were in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Beyonce in the room. Okay, I think they should have opened with the James Bond tribute, and then brought all the surviving Bonds on stage. And then that would have been a great time to do that. But there were all kinds of great ways to kick that show off, and they didn't do any of them. And then it took like 10 minutes before one of the hosts actually delivered what was akin to a monologue. That first little grouping all three of them together and doing the banter didn't work.
Nope.
Like you said, Regina shouldn't have been there. It's not really her strong suit.
Either use her and a bunch of people like her, or a bunch of comedians, one or the other, but not both.
Yeah.
Not both.
And Wanda had a couple of good lines. Amy had a couple of good lines, but not enough to sustain the show. It was flabby. This breaking the music up, starting with a DJ, then going to some kind of a band, and then having an orchestra. That didn't work either. You want some musical consistency in the show. So, I mean, there were all of these kinds of avant-garde things. They just weren't working at all. And, the Godfather tribute. I mean, dude, am I as a person of European ancestry off base here in saying, why are you choosing Diddy to introduce the Godfather? He has no connection to it. And then there was this hip hop score, and I thought, are you saying that like African American is the new Italian American? Are you making like a gangster mob connection here? Because that's what it felt like to me, and I was kind of insulted. Was I right to be insulted?
I don't know. I don't know that was right or wrong. I know that I made no connection between those things. For one thing, Diddy makes no sense because Diddy's not in the movie business. I think he acted in a movie too, or whichever.
He played himself. He played himself. He played himself in the movie about Big.
He did. He was in Monsters Ball. He played, but whatever. He ain't in the movie business. He's a music guy. I have no idea why you're even on the stage. Get all these music and TV people off the stage. Number one, all of there should have been connectivity between all of these things. And that was weird so there's no connective tissue there. So that's why it made no sense for me. You're not in the movie business. You're in the music business, and you have no association with The Godfather whatsoever.
I would have loved for Sofia Coppola to be the person who made that introduction.
There you go. Then we already got a lovely little connection, and we're perfectly fine again. I'm not. Look, I wasn't crazy about dragging all the old people out, just generally speaking, because
they didn't even let De Niro or Pacino say anything.
De Niro and Pacino probably were smart enough to know not to say anything. That's probably what that was. They were probably bright enough. Look, Travolta and Uma Thurman dancing and talking about $5 hamburgers or McGriddle. No, if you're gonna come out, just come out, stand there with dignity.
Thank you. That's all we want. No banter. We'll
applaud you.
I mean, dragging out Liza to humiliate her in a wheelchair, a woman who used to dance up a storm even when she was in her 50s and 60s. I can't. I just couldn't.
It was terrible.
It was. I wanted to cry.
And here, look, it's not like I'm trying to hide old people. I'm quickly getting there, and I want to revere them and venerate them. I do. So I'm not trying to put them in a box and hide them away. That's not what I'm saying. If you're going to drag Liza out onto the stage with Lady Gaga, for God's sakes, don't make her do anything. Just let her sit there and wave. Don't give her any envelopes or have her say anything. Just don't make her do anything. Her being there is what she's doing. That's her contribution.
That is a great point.
Better yet, Francesca pointed this out. What you really want to do is stick her out in the audience in some fancy booth, where you're surrounded by pretty boys, and just let her sit there and wave and drink all night. And every now and again you cut the Liza. That's what you do with the old people. You don't you don't give them a job, and it's so that was just all horrifying. And then
take it away. You take it away.
On behalf of all black men everywhere, I'd just like to apologize for the behavior of my people. Look, I know that individuals are responsible for the things that individuals do, but I'm not gonna pretend like that in the context of black folks. I talk about black people in the black community on this show all the time. So it would be disingenuous of me to sit here and pretend like the black community writ large, and lots of other people too, don't have a stake in the things that black folk do, particularly when black folks rise high. When they rise high, we rise with them. We talk shit, and we're happy. I believe that this is probably true amongst all peoples, and certainly amongst all underrepresented peoples. And it's wonderful. My Jewish folks loved it when Sandy Koufax was throwing no hitters. Of course they did. Of course they did, and so on and so forth. So. Understanding that to be true, I do want folks to know that in the black community, that resonated in a very particular way. To watch a black man walk onto a stage, ostensibly the largest audience event in the world, maybe the Super Bowl is bigger, and hit not just somebody, but hit another black man, slap another black man. As deeply as that goes, generally speaking, as a you can't get there from here sort of situation in any context. In the black community, we take all of that and then we add a notch. We turn it up to 11, as they used to say. And that's for us, that's an 11. It's a 10 in the world, but it's an 11 for us. And it will have ramifications through the black community henceforth and forever. Henceforth and forever, that will be a thing that happened at the Oscars. And it will be a thing that happened between two black men. And in all black communities, the conversation will always end with that. Whatever else we say, the conversation is going to end with that. And it's a knot in our stomachs. It's a knot in my stomach. And there it is. The thing itself, you can't get there from here. As I said, Will Smith had no reason, right? No matter what he thought was said about anybody, there is no laying hands on, period. That don't happen. That is wrong. He's wrong. All wrong. Nothing but wrong. Chris Rock, as Ray said, when you invite the court jester to the banquet, you can't kill him when he makes a joke about the king. You're going to run out of court jesters if you do that. So that's just wrong, no matter what he said. As it happens, I don't think he said anything particularly offensive at all. That's just me. That joke was funny as hell. Maybe it's funny as hell because I'm old, and I actually went to the premiere of G.I. Jane. I actually remember, I remember Demi Moore walking around and doing doing the circuit with that bald head. And what I remember is everybody was amazed at how ridiculously beautiful she was.
Yeah.
They're like, damn, Demi Moore is fine as hell, even bald, and that's what I remember. And I can get to a place where the comment that he made was actually a comment about Jada Pinkett Smith looking beautiful, which, by the way, she literally did. She was sitting there being beautiful right there for the entire world to see. And I can't get my mind around any of it, Wade.
I love all your comments because it gives me a new perspective too. And I have read everything in the past 48 hours, and I have refrained from weighing in too heavily because opinions are easy to have. We know what they say about opinions. And so I've been reading a lot. I read Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's comment, which I thought was incredibly insightful and wise. He said a lot of the same things you just did. I read what Jamel Hill wrote for The Atlantic, which I thought also raised a lot of interesting points. I obviously saw Tiffany Haddish's tweet, which I am so sorry that she said because it's not going to play well.
No.
And, I watched...
the whole thing about black women being under attack and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Except that there was no black woman under attack. And, that's a delusion.
I watched Russell Brand this morning. He did a whole 15 minutes on it, which was fascinating. I mean, and I'm not a Russell Brand fan, but he really went down and he said, look, as an Englishman, I can relate to all three of them. I can relate to, a person whose wife's just been insulted, or to the wife who's just been insulted, or to the guy who says, I didn't insult you, I'm just telling a joke. Like, he tried to put himself in all three points of view, and he went through it very intelligently. And so I followed that, and, Joe Rogan weighed in, and I watched that. And, so I've absorbed all of this. And, Jim Carrey.
I particularly like what he had to say because Jim.
I agree.
He
went to the audience.
He was about the audience. He was about this room is a room full of cowards.
Yeah.
And anyway, yes, go on.
So I mean, there's a lot still to unpack in this. There's a lot. Will was laughing until he wasn't. Some people thought it was staged. There's a little meme floating around that's, suggesting that Chris was prepared for it. He leaned into it. I think Chris was preparing for something other. I don't think it was staged.
No, it wasn't staged. I think Chris was thinking that Will is about to be funny.
I think Chris was prepared for a little improv shtick with Will.
Yeah. Yeah, Will's going to come and
Will's going to come. So
we're going to do
we're going to do a thing. We're going to do a bit. And Chris is immensely talented at that.
Yeah.
People talked about how much poise he showed, and people have to understand where Chris comes from. All those guys, if you've done stand-up, if you've reached the pinnacle of stand-up, if you are Chris, or if you're Dave Chappelle, or if you're Patton Oswalt, or, if you're any Jim Jeffries, you name it, you go right down the line. You have been heckled, within an inch of your life. You have bombed, in a divey club somewhere in the Midwest, and you have had to dig your way out by being sharp and fast and quick on your feet.
Yeah.
And so they develop those skills over many decades. Chris is pushing 60. Let's not forget, Chris Rock is not the Chris Rock that,
he's our generation.
He is. He's done this a long time, and he's well seasoned at it. And so that he showed grace under fire. I am not surprised at. I applaud him.
No,
but he's hosted the Oscars before himself, all by himself, so he knows the gig.
Let me tell you why Chris showed grace on the fire. Chris showed grace on the fire because I used to watch Chris play at what's the name of it? It was the black comedy club down in the hood, early 90s. Fat Tuesdays is what with the PH back when all the fats. And if you have ever played comedy clubs in the hood, black comics and black comedy clubs, if you play black comedy clubs in the hood, Will Smith walking around, that just ain't nothing. You're Suge Knight, pissing off Suge Knight in a comedy club in 1992. Now that takes courage, and I seen Chris Rock do that. So Will was definitely funny to him.
Here's what disappoints me the most. And I've said this, I think, on the show before. I have, in all the years that we were doing junkets,
Yeah.
and you and I have done a bajillion junkets. There are only 3 celebrities whom I ever thought entirely took over a room with the sheer force of charisma, where they walk into a room and there's an aura and there's personality and there's charisma and they own the room and they control it. And everyone just kind of falls into their orbit. And they do it in different ways. But those 3 were Arnold Schwarzenegger, Russell Crowe, and Will Smith. Those 3. And, you know, Schwarzenegger kind of intimidated you a little bit with the force of his, you know, badassery. Russell Crowe was just downright insulting. He insults everyone into loving him. It's the weirdest thing in the world. The more he curses at you, the more he yells at you, the more you love him. I don't understand it, but it is what it is. And then Will just came in with this gregariousness, this love for everyone. That was irresistible. And that was the Men in Black junket. That was not yesterday.
Yeah.
And since then, you know, you want to believe that becoming a father, becoming a husband, becoming one of the richest celebrities who's ever existed. I mean, well in excess of $300 million. The estate that they live on, which is not far from me, is gigantic.
It's that Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks type shit.
It's like Neverlands type stuff. You know, It really is on that level. It's enormous. He has so much success. You would assume that personality, that level of success, so much experience on the night when you know that you are going to win that award, that should translate into a level of professionalism because you've been there. Yeah. You've just been there. And I always think too, you know, this day, I don't know, probably about 20 years ago when Charles Barkley was ridiculing celebrations in the NBA, guys who, you know, get a dunk and then celebrate. And he was knocking it down. He was saying like, that's immature. You're a veteran. You've played through high school and through college. Act like you've been there before.
Act like you've been here, man.
Act like you've been here. And something snapped, and it's so disappointing, and it makes me so sad.
And I will say that especially since look, and again, this is all like everything I'm about to say is ridiculously unfair, but I'm gonna say it anyway. If for some bizarre reason that situation involved 50 Cent, right? Rapper turned actor producer. You know, not like Will. You know, I like that. But somehow he was there and he was going to get an Academy Award. And somebody said, and 50 Cent got up and ran up there and punched the motherfucker in the face. Somehow I would be like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't be fucking with 50. I don't know. That's wrong. That is wrong. It's wrong what 50 does. It's wrong.
No, you raise a really interesting point. I've gone through this with people too. And there are no answers to this. No. Right? There are no answers to this. But I've said, okay, what if it was not Will Smith? What if it was 50 Cent? What if it was Suge Knight? You would start saying like, well, that's it's right. Or what if it was Mel Gibson? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, or what if instead of Chris Rock, it had been Dwayne Johnson? Would Will have done that?
Well, he wouldn't. And I take it a notch further. I'm not the first to say it. If that had been any white presenter, not Chris Rock, any white presenter, I don't know, Russell Crowe. You just talked about Russell Crowe's always fucking with me. If that's Russell Crowe and Will Smith for whatever reason it's still a different situation. Yeah. We live in that complicated of society where all of these things, frankly matter. And they mattered that night too. You know, I mean, at the moment in that evening, as when first of all, you know, Chris went on with his thing, Questlove won, which is like so ridiculously ironic that a man named Questlove.
I know. Amir Thompson for some of us.
Amir Thompson.
We're going to give him the dignity of using his actual name because Questlove. We love it.
Just insanely ironic that this is the guy that takes the stage after the attack between two black men, and also
with a beautiful speech that got so overshadowed, by the way.
And what did he win for? A movie called The Summer of What? Soul, about what? A bunch of black people in 1969 having a celebration, a months-long celebration in Harlem. And I'm like, all of this together was swirling through my head. I don't know if everyone was tying together all of these things in that moment, but all of that was swirling through my head. It is what it is. but it has eclipsed the La La Land Moonlight fiasco.
Yeah, it sure did.
That's gone. Nobody's going to talk about that anymore.
Do you remember when David Niven had the streaker behind him?
That's out. That's out.
So gone.
That's out.
Sash on Littlefeather and Marlon Brando. That's gone. It's all.
Nobody's going to talk about that one anymore. So
I have to say, I mean, I've been saying this a long time. There are all kinds of systemic problems here with the Academy Awards right now. And yes, a lot of it has to do with technology and changing audiences and streaming and all of these things. And that's all manageable to my mind. But, Dawn Hudson, nice lady, but I think she's been a terrible CEO. She came in from the Spirit Awards and Film Independent, which was not what you wanted to hire. You don't hire the CEO of Fiat to run Rolls-Royce. You just don't. These are different things, and or General Motors. It's not. Spirit Awards is a casual kind of crazy unhinged evening, and that's what people expect it to be. And the Oscars is a whole different thing. And she has presided. She has nowhere else to hide. She's presided over a whole bunch of different shows and different producers and different situations over the last 6 years, and the ratings are collapsing. It's happened on her watch with her hires. And nothing has improved. It's only gotten worse. She's under contract until next May, but it is my sincere hope, and if anybody's listening to this who has an ear of people at the Academy or any of the governors, you need to drive her out this year. You need to start the search for a new CEO immediately. You need to sign that person up well in advance of this year's award season. That person needs to come on no later than early summer. June and July, you need to have a new CEO in place. They need to bring a whole new staff in, clean house. They need to evaluate all current policies, all current rules. And when award season rolls around, kind of October-ish, you need to be preparing for what this show is going to be next year with a new CEO of the Academy, a whole new way of approaching things, and putting all of this in the rearview mirror. They need to have, this cannot be the same regime dropping the ball again next year. They've had a decade and they've not done well with it. And I just hope people at the Academy need to do that. But the problem is you have 54 governors from 17 different branches. You got 3 people from each of the 17 branches, and then you got 3 at large. It's too many people to make proper decisions. I find that there are too many governors for that organization to be agile as the way that it needs to be. So, for example, every snippet from SNL and from the Tonight Show and every late night talk show is circulating as a shareable ditty, a little shareable thing on social media within hours. Mm-hmm. Why can I not go and find, for example, Humphrey Bogart's acceptance speech? Yeah. Like at the snap of my fingers. Why can't I find Audrey Hepburn accepting? Why can't I find Sidney Poitier's acceptance speech? Why can't I find when, somebody received the Jean Hersholt Award? Why can't I find Jackie Chan's honorary Oscar? Like, I should be able to go to ampass.org or oscars.org and just at one search, pull that up. Right there. Why can't I find that?
Not only should they be indexed in that way. Frankly, every single Oscar telecast, the very next year, should be completely and totally available for anybody to watch anywhere in the world, anytime they want. So the night of the Oscars, the previous year's Oscars, the whole telecast. Yeah, just be there a few days before, whatever it is, the whole telecast, and then that, because why not? And then the sort of indexing that you're talking about, absolutely. To me, it's this simple: the human beings involved, notwithstanding, the answer to the question, the way to fix the Oscars is with one thing: simplicity.
So true.
Simplicity is all we need. Yeah. What we're going to do is we're going to vote on a bunch of winners. And then on the evening of the Oscars, someone is going to dignifiedly walk out to the stage and a host and invite a presenter out to the stage. And they're going to say, hello. How are you? I'm fine. And then
the nominees are.
And we're going to do that through the whole damn show. And if you're not a naturally funny person, Tom Hanks, or whoever, presenting or hosting, if you are not a person who can simply be funny, shut up and read the cue card.
That's it.
And that's it. There are human beings who are funny.
Yeah.
Who can pick Billy Crystal. You know, you don't have to write a joke for Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal, he would find the funny. So, you know, and so with simplicity, that show will be just fine. No skits, no bits, performances, frankly.
And you know what I want to see? There was an Oscar cast that came in at a little, like around 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I want to say it's like 1979, 78, 19, something like that. I want to go back and see how the hell they did that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see that.
What was on the show? What was in the show?
There weren't fewer categories. They still had, 24 categories, and people came out and read the nominees and handed out the awards and got award speeches, acceptance speeches. I mean, it happened the same way. Somehow they got that done. They got that business out of the way in record time. So I'd like to go back and see that show and make take some notes.
Well, what it requires is for the Academy to engage in what we are doing. This is what we're doing, and we're doing it very, very simply. Instead of posing the question, what does the audience want to see? That's the question that's being posed. What does the audience want to see? Who gives a fuck? This is what we're doing.
Tim, I'll tell you something. I'll tell you what the audience wants to see. And this is the conundrum. This is the conundrum for the Academy Awards. What the audience wants to see is artistic validation for the movies that they went to go see.
Yeah.
And if the studios are not making movies that mass market, mass appeal movies that deserve artistic consideration, that's a problem. And if movies that get artistic consideration are not being made by the studios and marketed to a mass audience, that's also a problem. Those two things have bifurcated increasingly since the 1970s. And rapidly over the last 20 years and the last 15, it's kind of been, a critical mass. The top 10 films of the year never get any Oscar nominations, and the top 10 Oscar winning films make like $100,000 between them. It's gotten to be that crazy. We're not in that realm of Rain Man winning Best Picture and also making $200 million at the box office anymore. We're in a much more dangerous place. And the Oscars can't control, or at least they think they can't control, the movies that are being made. But we've talked about this on the diversity front too. What you should be doing instead of trying to wag the dog is go to the studios and say, we want to work with you and help you to make more big mass market movies that are Oscar worthy. We want to help you make the kinds of films that win awards. We'll make it worth your time. And then go to schools and say, we want to help you give an education, a film education to kids who otherwise might not see a path to getting into this business. Because when you look at Academy governors, Tim, I've looked into this. These are people, for the most part, who are born and raised in LA, born and raised in New York, born and raised in the Bay Area, in large urban centers where they get to go to major theaters, where they have film educations in these large school districts that are connected to media in some way. A kid who comes out of Mississippi, who comes out of Montana, a kid who grows up in Uruguay, a kid who grows up in Vietnam. What's their path to becoming an Academy Award nominated filmmaker, artisan, a path to becoming a member of the Academy? It's almost unthinkable. If the Academy wants to really diversify its membership and its nominees and the films, you've got to take some of that cash that you earn and you've got to pay it forward. You've got to go to those corners of the world where people think that this is unreachable and untouchable. And you've got to plant those seeds and say, you know what? You don't see the ladder, so we're going to plant a ladder here that leads directly to us. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, particularly since they're so flush. The Academy is flush.
They are.
They got dough.
And so there are so many philosophical things that are wrong with the Academy, the way it sees itself, the way it sees the movies. I mean, there are just so many things that have to change. But the last thing I'll say about this, and I'll give you the final word there. But the last thing I'm going to say is, to manage the Academy, even when you have a CEO who may be terrible, you cannot have 54 governors. You've got to do what the UN does. You have the General Assembly and you got the Security Council. 54 governors, that's fine. That's your General Assembly. That's what represents all the branches. But you need to pick 10 people out of those 54, 10, 11, 12 tops. And those are the people who have to make the big decisions. And you got to reelect them every year. And if you don't like them, they go back into the body of the 54 and another 10 or 12 get elected. there has to be a different layer of management. You cannot go to 54 people every single time you need a major decision made. It's just not going to work in this day and age.
Yeah. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Well, here we are. All right, man.
All right. Well, you know what? Before we get into the DVDs, I wanted to also touch on something else that I've been doing too, and this is a thing that I just decided to do this year because we've had so much, everything's gone to streaming and whatnot. So this year I had an opportunity. I saw a lot of films projected. I saw Belfast projected. I saw Drive My Car projected. Dune, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. So 7 of the 10 films I saw projected.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. I'm really proud of that. So I decided to also see them in streaming, on Blu-ray or streaming or 4K or whatever it is. Some of them like Nightmare Alley and West Side Story I watched on streaming code because Disney doesn't send us discs anymore. They send us codes. So I did this, and a really interesting thing happened. I think Belfast is a better movie projected. Dune is a better movie projected. Yeah. They suffer when you watch them on on television. I think Nightmare Alley is. I've gone back and forth on this. I think I enjoyed Nightmare Alley more watching the streaming version of it on Movies Anywhere. I think Nightmare Alley worked better for me. That first hour that felt so long and so flabby and so arduous in the theater is better. I manage the time better somehow when I'm sitting in front of my television. And West Side Story, which I don't like, and you and I have a really interesting different perspective on this, which I really don't like in any way whatsoever. I thought it was a totally unnecessary remake. I found much more manageable at home. I think the original West Side Story is a powerful film to see projected, 70 millimeter, the color and everything. Spielberg's West Side Story, all that fast editing, all of that rapid camera movement and so forth, that annoyed the crap out of me. Much easier to digest when I could sort of gauge my own proximity to the screen. Licorice Pizza, better movie projected.
Oh, really?
Power of the Dog, absolutely the same. King Richard, better movie in a theater.
Interesting. Very. Did you happen to watch that black and white version of Nightmare Alley?
I did not. I you know what? I kind of gave up on that with the last Mad Max film when they did the chrome version of it, whatever, black and chrome, silver and chrome, and I was like, it's just I don't get it. So no, I did not. Did you?
No, yeah, I did. I had to do it for the show, but I watched it because I saw Nightmare Alley in the theater. And then for the show that they get sent us a code or whatever for the black and white one. So and I thought, well, that'll be interesting. So I queued it all up and tweaked the set and got it looking the way it looked, and there it was, all okay. Then I popped in that Tyrone Power film, what's 47 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which of course is natural and just in black and white, same settings. And it looked, and the 47 film looked far and away better. The streaming, Nightmare Alley, was all crunchy, and edgy, kind of graphic novel-y. Who was that guy that used to do all that stuff in Sin City? What's his name? Frank Miller. Yeah. Kind of Frank Miller-y. And whereas the 47 film, it was just a whatever thing, it was just sort of soft, lovely gradations, Yeah. And I blacked it up a little bit more just on my set. And I'm like, this is, in every context, this is a better movie. It doesn't make any difference what he does. In every context, this is just a better movie. So,
Well, and so here I'm going to now ask, did Coda deserve to win? Well, because Coda, I'll just say this, Coda, only 3 nominations. It won all 3 of its nominations, which is kind of going back to Grand Hotel in whatever it was, 1935 or 4 or whatever. And Grand Hotel had 1 nomination, and that nomination was for Best Picture, and it won. And this is, and it also won without a director nomination, which, like Driving Miss Daisy and Argo, also won without a director nomination. So it made that weird late season run. It was not on anyone's lips until it won SAG, until it won the PGA, and everybody started saying, well, Coda might win. And sure enough, it did. It came up the middle in a weak year. How do you feel about Coda winning?
I'm perfectly okay with it, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But I know why it won is because a couple of other pictures sort of did themselves in. So Jane Campion, who won Best Director, Campion, she was floating around out there saying some wacky shit, and I think it cost her that.
That's also a really divisive film too, because when, like, for example,
and it's a very divisive film, as opposed to Coda, which is not.
No, it's not. It's safe, and I've always said the preferential ballot when you're ranking films, whoever gets the most number 2s and 3s, and it is kind of everyone's second or third favorite film. That's usually the one that wins because nobody loves it, but nobody hates it, so it gets just enough mid-level mushy points to kind of drive through.
Which is perfectly reasonable, because that means that of all of the people in that room and of all of the people that watched all of these films, that is the film that very few of us would say, I hated that movie.
Yeah, it's so true. That's
no one was going to say that. They the little slight thing they say, oh, it's like an after school special. Well, yeah, but you know what? I liked after school specials. So it lives there. And then there are those who simply just really dearly love it because they love a movie that is, a really, really feel good movie, but they actually really do love that kind of a movie. You add that together. I like a feel good movie. I like Coda quite a lot. I understand why people love it. I could live, or I could go. Look, Power of the Dog, Campion's 5th best film. It's her 5th best film, but she's only made 5.
Well, I'll say this: I feel like all the good people took home awards. Sean Heder was not nominated for directing Coda, but she won an Oscar for writing it, so she got hers. Jane Campion didn't win Best Picture, but she won. She's the second woman nominated, or the first woman nominated twice for Best Director. Mm-hmm. She won previously for a screenplay. She now has a directing award. So good on Jane Campion. Mm-hmm. Kenneth Branagh, first person ever nominated in 7 different categories. He got his screenplay award. Good. And Questlove, Amir Thompson, first-time filmmaker, legendary musician, makes this passion out of this passionate documentary. He gets his, and those were the awards that made me happy, because I looked at those people and I thought, you know what? Every filmmaker, no really good filmmaker here tonight walked away empty-handed. The filmmakers that I felt needed to walk away with some kind of validation, they all did.
Yeah, that's true.
So despite the crappy show, despite the embarrassing moment, despite all the other stuff, despite, Jessica Chastain winning for an absolutely ridiculous performance that was all makeup, Penelope Cruz should have taken that home. But despite all of it, I felt like, you know what? That award show is going to fade, but the filmmakers who needed those statuettes to propel them to the next job, that show is not going to tarnish that award.
No, yeah, and in the context, look, there's what these Academy Awards mean to those of us out here, and then there's what they mean to those actual filmmakers, to filmmakers in general. All of that is intact. Sean is going to do fine. All of that, all of those people, Ariana, going to do fine. Everybody's going to do fine. That part of it is going to be just fine. They will, all the agents got all the right phone calls, Monday morning. And deals are being signed. All of that's good, and we've had our little 37-minute conversation here now. So,
Well, we've been at this for 48 minutes now. So that's, we normally put 15 minutes in, 10 to 15 minutes for our first segment, but this was important. This was history. And we are now going to migrate to this week's DVDs and Blu-rays and 4Ks. So, Tim, let's start with the 4Ks. I just want to say we got the new 50th anniversary Godfather trilogy on 4K.
Oh yeah.
And I have watched, I'm going to admit, I have watched all 3 films in 4 cuts, and there are 5 basically available. There are 3 different cuts of Godfather 3, the original theatrical cut, the first home video cut, which went to 170 minutes, and then the Godfather Coda cut of it, which is even shorter than the theatrical cut, the more recent recut. So all 3 of those are there. I have watched, I watched 2 of those and the other Godfather 1 and 2, both streaming, both the Movies Anywhere version of them, or rather the Vudu, I shouldn't say Movie Anywhere because it's Paramount, the Vudu version of them, which is still just Blu-ray. It's still just HD, not 4K, and the 4K on the discs. And having been there when the Godfather 1 and 2 were being restored, I was there with Alan Dovyow and Richard and Robert Harris in the rooms. We were going to do a book on it, which never happened, but I was there watching them do that meticulous work. And so I've got to say, it is amazing how good these films suddenly look in 4K.
Wow.
It is stunning because they didn't sharpen anything that didn't need to be sharpened. This is still Gordon Willis's grainy photography, and it is magnificent. And I'm just going to say right now, this is one of the problems I have with acting today, is that performances are not allowed to linger. When everybody's in too much of a rush to cut, they're in too much of a rush to move the camera, to get on to the next scene. At the end of Godfather 2, when Diane Keaton is beating a hasty retreat out of the house, right? When Talia Shire is like, he's coming, Michael's coming, let's get you out. She's seeing her kids, and she gets, and then she's just about out the door. She's kissing the kids, and she looks up, and there is the blood drains from her face, and you get that reverse shot, and it's Pacino, and he's standing there, just looking evil and horrible and cold, and he takes that long walk to the door, and then closes it in her face. There are shots there. There are close-ups on both Keaton and Pacino that take forever, and your skin crawls, and you get chills going up your spine, and it is acting and filmmaking as good as you will ever see it. And it just lets the moment live and breathe for so long that it gets right into your bloodstream. And I don't see that enough anymore. And
hardly ever.
It's extraordinary. So that being said, a lot of great extras on here. Tons of bonus content. Most of it you have seen before, storyboards and featurettes and short films and a whole ton of other things. So that's all here. You also get restoration comparisons, which are wonderful and give you a great insight into what I saw them actually doing. You get 8mm home movies that were shot in 1971 that I have never seen before. This was all, astonishing stuff. You get this wonderful little conversation, kind of a commentary conversation called Capturing the Corleones, which is through the lens of photographer Steve Shapiro, which is, it's just more stuff you've never seen before. It's beautiful. And an introduction by Coppola. And my favorite thing here is a thing called Full Circle, Preserving the Godfather, where you go through with the archivists talking about, all the different technologies that they've employed, which a lot of which didn't exist at the time that they did the first restoration that I saw. So really, really amazing stuff. Just absolutely fantastic. Cannot highly recommend that enough. You got to get it onto your shelf. Double dip, triple dip, do whatever you got to do. Let's talk also for a second about American Werewolf in London, which now gets a 4K release from Arrow, loaded with more extras than I have had any remote time to look at. But I gotta say, I think there's this video essay on here by John Spira, which is hysterical. It's called, I Think He's a Jew, The Werewolf's Secret, which goes into the whole idea that this is some kind of the American Werewolf in London is John Landis's metaphorical exploration of Jewish identity. Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, not going over there. That's that's weird. The other day, you did my class the other day, and the week after you did it, John Bruno came and did it, and John Bruno did all the original sketches and storyboards for American Werewolf in London. So that entire transformation scene. We looked at, he's sitting there and you look at the guy stretching on the floor and all that kind of stuff. John drew all of that out with John Landis, sitting at his house in pencil and charcoal, almost frame by frame. And we were looking, at his drawings, with the class there up on the screen. And then we played back the scene, in the movie, and Landis almost copied scene for scene, camera angle for camera angle, John Bruno's drawings as he laid out that scene. It's really was a really interesting exploration of that process. As we talked about all of the practical effects that were that they did back then, because all of that stuff is practical. Back in the day. And that's one of the things that I love most about that movie. Here's my question though: how does all of that hold up? What are we looking at there? Are we looking at Blu-ray? What are we? It's 4K. It's straight up 4K. How does those practicals hold up?
It holds up really well, in many respects better than CG, because you can tell that it's tangible. Let me just say, this morning, before this podcast, I had to go to the theater and suffer through Morbius, which honestly, let's see, the social media embargo ends in 2.5 hours, so I'll make that. This will go live. I'll break the embargo, but they'll never know. So, yeah, watching all the CG in that thing, where Jared Leto and Matt Smith are, they'll look normal and then they'll growl at each other and then the teeth and the nose.
Yeah, all that.
It looks fake. It looks fake. Now that's vampires, fair enough, but it's the same thing. The transformation, of a normal guy just going, and then his face transforms in like a second. It looks fake. It looks CG. It doesn't look. It doesn't look tangible. It doesn't look, tactile. And that's what I love about this, and why I think this looks great in 4K. Because you look at this, you show this to kids who are, weaned on digital, and they will look at that and they'll go, "Damn, that looks real."
Yeah,
like, how'd they do that?
Yeah. I noticed that in the class the other night.
Yeah,
that was the thing that was hitting the students. All the kids you met, they were like, they were like, is that there? And he's like, yeah, no, that's there. We built that. There's a dude under the floor doing stuff, and the hair, So anyway, very cool, very cool. I'm glad it holds up in 4K.
It really does. It's tremendous. And again, there are so many extras on here. It's almost like they said, "Oh, Criterion, huh? Okay, well we can quadruple the amount of stuff," and that's just so much. There must be like 3 or 4 days worth of stuff on here. I mean, it's just, there's featurettes and interviews and effects, and I mean, you could, if you're a real nerd, you will live with this thing for a day and a half.
Good.
Also on 4K, Steelbook of Shooter, the 15th anniversary of the Mark Wahlberg film.
Oh, that one. Because I was thinking it was that daggum TV series.
No, this is the Antoine Fuqua film Shooter with Mark Wahlberg and a surprisingly young-looking Danny Glover and Michael Pena and Elias Koteas and Ned Beatty even shows up in this thing. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, I remember that movie. Actually, Sherm was up for that movie. It was a pretty good little thriller from back in the day.
I had totally forgotten this thing even existed. So yeah, this was Lorenzo di Bonaventura thing, and this just had totally fallen off my radar. So it was interesting to see it again. I don't know that it needs a 4K, but I'm sure it has some lingering fans, and Paramount clearly did some research. So again, Steelbook of the Shooter.
Yeah.
Or just Shooter, not the Shooter.
Shooter, yeah.
Just Shooter. Also 4K of American Underdog, which is this Zachary Levi thing about Kurt Warner.
Yeah, when he was playing in my hometown.
Yeah, when he was.
That's when the Rams were in St. Louis that year.
Well,
don't get me. I'm just gonna let it go. But for that moment, they were in St. Louis, and this kid Kurt Warner, packing boxes, comes along, and and it was a really good story. It's quite a story. It's a true story.
It's a beautiful story. I didn't even know most of that story. I just remember him, his wife, who's a bunch of years older, and a lot of people made fun of that, and he won the Super Bowl, and and now I have all, now that the Rams are a Super Bowl champ again, it's really perfect timing. You couldn't have written a better script for it. But this is also on 4K. I don't know that this needs to be on 4K, but the guys who directed this, the Irwin brothers, who I think have a pretty strong future. I mean, it's really, really sweet. It's nicely put together. Dennis Quaid shows up in this.
Zachary Levi is great too. He plays Shazam or whatever, the Marvel.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, what movie could this guy do where he's not in those tights? Where they? I don't know. This movie. this is exactly right. He's actually a big guy. I don't know if you've ever actually seen him.
He is. I know. He's bigger than you think he is.
Yeah. So yeah.
And then the last 4K title this week, The Many Saints of Newark. Who Made Tony Soprano? This is the Sopranos prequel with James Gandolfini's son playing him younger. I just don't.
I have any use for this. I got no use for this. But there it is. And I do love Alessandro Nivola in it. And Leslie Odom Jr. walking around it too. I mean, there's stuff I like about it. But I'm good with my Tony Soprano, dude.
I worry about this tendency to milk franchises until they are just, until they're just shriveled up, dried fruit. And there's a lot of that going on. Oh, let's bring back all the girls from Sex and the City, and now that they're well past menopause, and let's force them to act sexy again on TV. Oh, let's bring back everybody from Will and Grace now that they're all shriveled up too, and let's make them suffer through that shtick again. Oh, let's do whatever we can with the Sopranos. Oh yeah, Gandolfini's dead, but let's exploit his son. I mean, I know that sounds really cynical, but I feel like, there's at a certain point you've got to let these things go. You can't keep trying to squeeze them. Just come up with new franchises. So I do
a new idea. Quit milking it. Quit going back to the well. It can get, and I'm not going to say all of it's always terrible, but 9 times out of 10 it is. Certainly 7 out of 10. And it just seems kind of, look, I remember enjoying the Brady Bunch movies.
Yeah, I agree.
Some 30 or 40 years after the end of the Brady Bunch. But it was a movie, and it didn't drag. Right. I think they were all still alive at the time. It didn't drag them out and make a movie with all the old Bradys. You're 30, 40, 50 years old. No, they just did it again. This is the same thing in reverse. But I'm like, for one thing, this is anticlimactic to me because I know what happens to all these people. Corey Stahl playing Junior Soprano. I know how he goes down.
Yeah.
Corey. I know what happens to all of these people. So I can't get invested in these folks. I know what happens to Ray Liotta's. So I don't know. Weird set of choices to me.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. Well, anyway, let's move on. Let's do some TV. I want to put our first shout out. This came out end of last year, but a lot of this stuff we were not able to get because for a lot of reasons, fulfillment and, all those shipping containers that are out there off the coast of everywhere that make it hard to get your food. Yeah, that's impacted DVDs and Blu-rays too. Yeah. So we're ramping up. We're going to do a little bit of catching up here. Small Axe, the Steve McQueen series of 5 films, which won our LAFCA award last year for best film. Was not eligible for the Oscars because it was deemed to be a television production. But these are in fact 5 individual films, and that's what makes this, I think, so incredible. I'm disappointed there isn't a Blu-ray of this. This is only from BBC as a DVD. It's very disappointing. So I hope that there is some kind of a Blu-ray release or a 4K release would be preferable. That BBC realizes there's a real audience for this. Steve McQueen made 5 individual films, at least 2 of which I would say are the best films he's ever made. And they are all basically about the experiences, the culture, the life of the West Indies immigrant community in the UK in the 1970s and 80s, which I think is a very interesting and specific thing. And that means people of the Caribbean, British citizens in the Caribbean of African descent from many hundreds of years earlier who go back to the United Kingdom to establish a community in London. And that means people from Jamaica, from the Bahamas, from, that whole Caribbean area where there are still British territory, still
British Virgin
Islands, all of that. And that's a very particular community which exists in the UK independent of any African expatriates as well. It's a very specific community with a very specific culture and a very specific time, the 70s and the 80s. And I thought these films are beautiful. Every single one of them. Every one of them.
Extraordinary. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, their tomato approval ranges between 97 and 99.
It's amazing.
It's extraordinary. And they're very different films. Telling very diverse stories. A Lover's Rock happens to be my favorite, although Alex
that's
Tweedle
most people's favorite.
It's just this beautiful film, and it has to do with this. Lover's Rock is a certain kind of music that's very popular during that period of time, but they're all very, very strong. So what does anything come with those? Does anything?
Tim, there's almost nothing here. There are basically featurettes.
Okay,
that's it. I mean, there are a few feet, but it's not nearly enough. What I most want, and this is why I hope that there's a special edition coming. I want Steve McQueen commentaries on all of these.
Me too.
Because I want to hear because he is of West Indies ancestry. That's why he did this. He and his co-writer on a couple of these also. And I want to hear the personal connection. I want to know, because this is the first time that he's made anything that's really that personal. 12 Years a Slave is an American story.
Yeah.
And he's not American.
Yeah. Shame is not really.
Shame's not really. Shame is a very. Is whatever. I mean, the Bobby.
Bobby Sand, that movie.
The Bobby Sands movie. He's Steve McQueen's not Irish. He's So he's made movies that are disconnected from his very personal experience. I'm sure he can find.
Well, they're part of the British experience, and he's British, so they matter to him. All of those.
But this one's super personal, I want those. Yeah, I want those commentaries. My favorite here, by far, is Red, White, and Blue, the John Boyega story, where he's a scientist who decides to become a cop, and his dad is this very proud immigrant, and it deals with racism in the policing and the sacrifice that he makes. And there's just some amazing stuff in there, and where you see McQueen, who I didn't used to really like as a filmmaker. I thought there was too much of a kind of a pretentious artist in there. Like there was too much of the Peter Greenaway impulse.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And he's gotten away from that to where he now has this amazing confidence in just like, there's a shot, for example, where the camera is in the back of the car and they're talking and they get out and they walk and the conversation transpires in front of the car and you're still in the camera in the back seat.
Yeah.
He didn't go outside. He didn't cut to the conversation in front of the car. He just had so much confidence in the staging of that shot that he said, you know what? This is my spot.
Yeah.
I got my camera here. I can make the scene work without budging an inch. I trust the actors. I trust the frame. That level of filmmaker confidence, I get tingles, when I see that, and I love it. And so I hopefully get it now, double dip when you need to.
Yeah. Can't go wrong.
Other TV, man. What else do you see there?
What is Tiger? Is there?
Oh, that's the. So let's hit those. Those are the two HBO.
Tiger and Tina.
Yeah, Tiger and Tina. Let's do those. These are the HBO docs. Blu-ray for Tina. Just a DVD for Tiger. I kind of makes sense. You get, Tiger doesn't demand a Blu-ray per se. There's a lot of footage here that's just not going to do well. Yeah, Tiger Woods, HBO Sports, solid doc.
I really enjoyed the first half of that documentary because it took me back.
It's about 3 hours long, so that first half. It's
a lot. But that took me back to we see young because he was a prodigy. At such a young age, there's footage of Tiger Woods from childhood, young little boy, on the Merv Griffin show with his daddy, swinging golf clubs and stuff. So there was this constant sort of coverage of him, and all of that was interesting to me. I remembered all of that, and it took me back to that the sort of interesting moment that again occurred with Tiger with respect to the black community because. People when Tiger first hit the scene, Tiger was a black golfer. He was in Nike commercials and stuff.
Yeah, I know.
He was Spike Lee directed all this kind of stuff. And then there came this moment, and it's in the movie, and people will remember it. And Tiger decided not to be a black golfer anymore, and with this very sort of deliberate sort of thing. And the entire black community went, "Oh, really?" And it was a very, very interesting thing. And then the second half of the documentary, documents all of the sort of wackiness that happens later in his life with the wife and the girlfriend. All that stuff is less interesting to me. But that sort of historical stuff, that was very, very captivating.
I agree. And I think part of the issue for me, even though it's very good in its running time, which is long, I mean, it's well over 3 hours, but this is a story that still hasn't been finished.
Oh yeah.
So there's a final act to his career and his life, which we are still in the process of witnessing. So I do feel like it's a little premature, as opposed to Tina, who is now happily married and perfectly happy with the fact that her career has played its way out, and she's just sort of living in the wake of that. If you saw What's Love Got to Do with It, you know a lot of the story, but you don't know all of the story, and there's a lot that this really fills in. And this is only 2 hours, and it's dense and it's wonderful, and the music is amazing. But the most interesting part of this, I think, is that aspect of Tina Turner's career where we forget that after she bailed on Ike, finally got the courage to cut Ike loose, at a certain point, she was considered old and over the hill. This is in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember Tina Turner in the 70s. I certainly, remember her, flashing those legs on Sha Na Na and all that other stuff. And back in, the 60s, early 70s, being on the Tom Jones show, and she and Tom Jones just cutting it up hard. But Tina of the 80s was a different generation. And she was already much older than other 80s artists. There are no artists in the 80s who date back into the 60s. Yep. And she reinvented herself not as an R&B artist, but as a rock artist. And this doc gets into detail on what an incredible risk that was and how she just embraced it. And for that reason alone, you're talking about a timeless, courageous artist. And if you thought you had respect for Tina Turner before over what she went through in her career, what she suffered with Ike and all the rest of that, watch this doc. It will improve it tenfold. This woman is a treasure.
Tina was born in Nutbush, Tennessee.
Yeah.
1939. She's 82. Tina's more or less the same age as my mother. She's a little younger. Indeed, my mother, they went to the same high school. My mother was a freshman when Tina was a senior. And she always tells us about how this guy used to drive up in this Cadillac. And Tina would go and get in the car with this guy in this Cadillac. And, at the time, she's just being fast. It was Ike who she was getting in the car with, and driving off and drove off to become Tina Turner. Eventually had to leave Ike behind. but it's just funny, how small the world actually is. Tina Turner. She's so awesome. It is. So awesome.
Let's hit a couple of these other Universal titles here. We've got Chicago Med season 6, which I have not watched consistently across its series. Oddly enough, I just saw Jason Begay about 2 weeks ago at a wedding.
Yeah.
And connected with him, who pops in now and again. Jason Begay of Chicago PD. But Chicago Med, all these Chicago shows, they all interlocked and cross over, and Jason's the only person who ever really shows up on all of them. But, man, Dick Wolf, I just want to say, look, if you watch a couple episodes of season 6, here's the thing. I saw maybe most of season, I saw a couple episodes of season 1. I saw most of season 2 to try to catch up, kind of lost the thread around 3, didn't see anything in 4 or 5. I kid you not. I take this, season 6, I watched the first episode. Dude, I am caught up. I know every single thing that has happened on that show in the last 2 years. So say what you will about Dick Wolf, but somehow these shows they go down as easy as like a glass of water. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, there it is, man.
We've also got a New Amsterdam. Have you seen any New Amsterdam?
That's that doctor show. It's a young doctor guy, right? Another one of those. Yeah.
Ryan Eggold plays Max Goodwin, which is like why is the doctor's name never anything like Joe Matursky or something? Why does he never have a name like a steelworker? Why is it always like Max Goodwin? Emphasis on the good.
His name should be Doctor. And let's just get to it. Yeah, it's one of those shows, the good doctor shows. I used to love those. Yeah, I mean, we go way back. I go back. Why am I dragging you down with me? I go back to Medical Center, Chad Everett. And to me, that's the Medical Center, the Chad Everett sort of show of this era is what that show struck me as.
I can't stop harping on the name. His name is Max Goodwin. It's Max because you get good service to the max. He's good and he gives you such good service to the max that you're going to win. So he's Max Goodwin. I don't know how people don't laugh at that every single week.
Oh, I'm sure they got to be making fun of that in the show.
22 seasons into Law and Order Special Victims Unit, and this show somehow just keeps on ticking. I don't know how, but it just keeps on. A lot of new cast members here. I haven't seen this in a couple of years. Again, I watched like one episode. I'm all caught up.
Yeah.
I'm all caught up. I'm like, oh, so they promoted her to captain. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's rock solid. Honestly, it's the same thing. Olivia Benson doing what she's doing now, except now that she's captain now. Here's what really impresses me most about this show. Ice-T must be worth $1 billion by now.
You think?
Who would have thought when he was doing Cop Killer back in 82 or 83, that he would wind up spending 22 years of his life playing a cop.
Oh, Ice did. Ice used to always tell me, you people take all this shit way too seriously.
That's so true.
He used to tell me that all the time. 20 years ago, he's like, oh, for God's sakes, man, a cop killer. I live in the Hollywood Hills.
Then we've also got Devils season 1.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, this is really interesting. I had not seen any of this. This is from Sky Studios. I had seen none of this when it aired. This is actually a really, really interesting world. I mean, I like this better than high finance, but I like this a lot better than Billions. I do.
Oh, yeah.
Billions is too much of a cat and mouse. This is more intrigue. There's more nuance to this. There's more sort of moral ambiguity. I really, it's not soapy at all. I mean, it really gets into, there's a lot of interesting character stuff in here, but it's not kind of dirty and grungy and Dallas or Dynasty. It's none of that stuff. I mean, it really has some very, very interesting stuff. Gets into, the digital world, the interface between hacking and the dark web and high finance and all of this stuff.
It tries to keep the reality of the way these worlds work. And there are these characters, what's his name? Patrick Dempsey and the other pretty boy with the beard and all of that kind of stuff. But it tries to keep the reality of the way the worlds work. The reason why people, what they're doing and how they're doing it. There's a whole lot of explaining. There's a lot of explaining going on. Kind of like the movie Margin Call from a couple of years ago. But I kind of appreciate that,
Yeah. It's a sharp show. So I think it has a good future. And then where are we on the Blacklist? This is the 8th season. Did you ever imagine that James Spader would push through 8 seasons on this thing?
I was good for the first. I was good for the first season.
This is on Blu-ray. It's clearly doing well because most of these other shows, they leave it on DVD because they think people are just going to, it's not worth collecting. But man, the audience for this thing, this is from Sony, and they said, we're going to put this out on Blu-ray because people love this show. 8 seasons is a long time for a premise that I thought was going to run dry pretty much after that first season.
It might have ran dry after that first season. Nevertheless, they did 7 more. And there they are. They got any good stuff on there?
There's bloopers, which is in deleted scenes, which is kind of fine because the show is so kind of intense and heavy that you need a little bit of steam blown off. Otherwise, not really much. It's the show itself, but some good acting on it.
Rick and Morty, Rick and Morty,
yeah, Rick and Morty,
because this is seasons 1 through 5, which would be just about my seasons.
Yeah,
I tapped out of Rick and Morty a while, but 1 through 5 is when I was kind of still into it and appreciating the sort of dry, droll, sarcastic thing that was going on there. It got on my nerves after a while, but for a while there, I really, really loved Rick and Morty.
I'm so cynical about this stuff. It's a Blu-ray, has digital code on it. You can do the whole schmear, but they have a poster in this, which no one will ever use. and then they put a great big red sticker on it, that says "Warning: Uncensored Content," which is clearly not a warning. It's a marketing tool. That always cracks me up. Like there's some parents out there who are saying, I think I'm going to buy, oh no, I better not buy this for my 4-year-old because there's uncensored content. No, I'm not going to let little Susie watch any Rick and Morty. Give me a break. Yeah. It's like saying, oh, warning, South Park is not child friendly. I mean, come on. Whatever.
Rick would make fun of you if you used that poster. By the way, you don't want to use that.
It's so true.
Rick would mock you.
We got the 4th season of Head of the Class with Howard Hesseman, the late Howard Hesseman.
We just lost Howard not too long ago, right? Yeah.
I know, it's very sad. Really missing him. And then, of course, Billy Connolly took over after he was done. But this is the final year of Howard Hesseman's run on Head of the Class, and it's a good nostalgic show. So I think it works. We've also got the 3rd season of Manifest. It's okay, right?
I worked it's that wacky show, but I worked my way through all those. One of these shows, an airplane disappeared 5-6 years ago and suddenly reappears full of the people, where were they?
The 828ers, the 828ers. Yeah.
The same thing as the 4400. They're like that. has been done like a dozen times. But you know what? I hung in there for a while. Kind of dug it.
Yeah, I did too. Second season of Prodigal Son, talking about a show that's run its course. This is on Blu-ray. I just don't see the point anymore. I think the first season kind of really pushed all the buttons that they could push. This feels a little bit on fumes. I will be surprised if this lasts much longer. If this thing goes to 8 seasons, I'm checking out, dude.
Yeah.
Speaking of taking a concept and just squeezing it.
Yeah.
Dexter New Blood. Why are we back with Dexter? If this had any juice in it, why'd they take it off the air in the first place?
It's a question. Look, in our homie Sherm, big Dexter fan, the whole the original Dexter, right? So this thing pops up, and he's kind of excited about it. And then I hit him up after it'd been out there for a while. He said, you know what? I watched 2, and I was out.
See,
he was a big fan. Yeah, but
that's how I was with Will and Grace. Yeah. That's how I was with Will and Grace. So we got a bunch from Showtime here, which we only recently got, and I've managed to push through a bunch of these. The rest I actually saw previously. So tell me what. So first of all, I want to call attention to one of these, which was also Oscar nominated, and which Questlove. He honored all of his co-nominees, but this is the one that won the Directors Guild Award. And I think it also won the Documentary Association Award, and that is Attica.
Stanley's movie.
With Stanley Nelson. Now, if you haven't followed Stanley Nelson has been an ace documentarian for a long time. Most of his films are based around the story of the Civil Rights Movement and Black history in America, but he's also done things like the Jonestown doc. From 15 years ago or whatever that was, just blew my mind. He's been a regular with
American Experience and all that stuff. Yeah.
And he is really one of our, along with
Tracy Curry.
Yes, along with Tracy Curry, and he is right up there with Ken Burns. As one of our preeminent documentarians. He never stops working. Attica is an amazing doc. I didn't watch this until like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I watched this for the radio show, so when it first came out, I watched it, and it's a fantastic thing.
It's
Attica, of course, and there have been, but what sets this one apart is that they were finally able to acquire and use the closed circuit video footage that has been there for the last almost 50 years.
How have we not seen it?
Lawsuits.
That's just. But see that's this is a point I wanted to make too. And I'm glad you brought that up. Because sometimes the hard work of being a documentarian is not in the making of the film. It's in getting the material to make the film.
Yeah.
And I just do not understand how that was unavailable for so long. But whatever Nelson did to get that footage.
And it's funny because he did the exact same thing effectively that Amir did with Summer of Soul. There was this footage sitting someplace. That people knew about but didn't really know about it and had just gotten lost to time. Questlove hears about it, finds it, pulls it together, and sorts a story out of it. Sorts the story that's there out of it. Stanley does the same thing over here. There's this footage, and what the footage basically does for years and years and years. Many of the people who were at Attica, involved in Attica on both sides, have told these stories. But what this footage allows is visual images, visual representation of literally the stories that's been told. So stories that have been told about what happened inside Attica by various people are now corroborated by actual images. So when somebody says, well, this is what happened to me, then he cuts to the footage of that happening to him.
Yeah.
And it frames it as a thing that you can't say, oh, well, there's probably hyperbole. No, it's just not hyperbole. Here it is right here, exactly as it is. And it's really, really strong. Although I'm still glad Summer of Soul won the other night.
No, I am too. And I think both films have gotten their due in the award season. And you know what? Stanley's career is not taking a hit because he didn't win the Oscar.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he'll win an Oscar one of these days. And if he doesn't, nobody cares because he's a legend.
Yeah,
he really is. He's an American documentary legend. Season 2 of City on a Hill, also on Showtime, also on DVD. I never saw season 1, so I was kind of catching up a little bit here. This is a pretty good show. It's got kind of a Wire vibe to it.
Yeah,
a little bit. It takes place in a housing project. And it's all about the politics that goes on. This, FBI agent, district attorney. So that's not bad.
It's in the early '90s. I like that whole
Yeah.
early '90s look and feel, and those double-breasted suits, and
Yeah.
it gets that real good. It
Yeah.
really nails all that.
Yeah. See, this is real.
Yeah.
We got a couple of really interesting here. I want to kind of mention these in one breath because the real Charlie Chaplin and the one and only Dick Gregory, I thought are both really, really, really good. And these are both Showtime documentaries that sort of bookend a fascinating period in American entertainment. And this is the thing. The amount of time that transpired between Chaplin's heyday and that of Dick Gregory, that is a more compressed period than what we have experienced since Dick Gregory.
Oh wow!
If you think about it, I
Yeah,
mean, from the 20s, and Dick Gregory really kind of comes of age late 50s with that generation of inner city comics. And you go from Chaplin's heyday, which is about 18, 19, 20, up to 1960. That's 40 years. We're 60 years past Dick Gregory. So, in 40 years to go from Charles Chaplin and silent film to Dick Gregory being a significant figure on, pioneering black comic on television is a really interesting trajectory. So that's why I was looking at these two docs and I thought that's a really interesting bookend to this period of American history and comedy and what we find funny and so forth. And what I find interesting is that both Chaplin and Dick Gregory found humanity and humor and pathos in the downtrodden.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an American tradition in that, and I think it's really beautiful. So both of these are beautiful documentaries, and Dick Gregory, seminal figure, Charles Chaplin, beyond seminal. There wouldn't be a film industry without him. So a couple of great docs there. Season 2 of Couples Therapy, which I had never watched until this came in. Did you watch any of this?
No, not that one.
I feel dirty. Dude, I do. I feel dirty. It's I feel like I shouldn't be there. This is a documentary series about people sitting down with a psychologist and talking a little bit too intimately about things I don't want to know about.
Yes. I don't live. This is a post our generation thing, man.
I know.
Where people, for whatever reason, are perfectly happy to take all of the business of their personal business and just flop it out there.
I know.
On TV and a reality show and at a Red Table Talk. That's one of Will's problems, by the way. That Red Table Talk. Will.
Oh yeah,
yeah, dude, that's one of your problems right there, son. Get your business off Instagram. That's crazy. But this is that, and I just can't do it.
I don't get it either. Well, then there's also a 4-part docuseries that J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot did called UFO, which I was afraid was going to be all kinds of, the aliens are here, they're among us, and just like in search of or some damn thing. But actually, it's not. It's a little more intelligent and high-minded than that, and it does get a little bit into, are they hiding something from us? Is there an alien, somewhere in a U.S. lab somewhere from Area 51 or something? But otherwise, I think it's an interesting psychological look at, the tagline on this is, "Are you ready?" And I think that's kind of the thrust of the show is, are we psychologically ready for the possibility of extraterrestrial contact? Mm-hmm. I will say, speaking for me, you can speak differently. Speaking for me, after the slap heard around the world and the pandemic and war in Ukraine and every other damn thing that's going on, if aliens showed up tomorrow, I'd be like, please take us away. Just take me away from all this, please.
Hey, rooting for it. As long as it's not those aliens from Independence Day. They had a bad attitude. But the rest of the aliens would be okay with me. Oh, you know what I see at the bottom of the TV list? Charmed, Nancy Drew, and Dynasty.
Yes.
And believe it or not, I'm a CW. You know me and my CW.
Yeah.
And I've even gotten sucked in. Look, Flash and Supergirl. Yes, sure. But I've even gotten sucked into Charmed, which I will admit, I was a Charmed fan back in the 90s. The first time Charmed was on, Shannon Doherty and whoever. And then they brought in Rose McGowan. I was a fan way back then. And here we've been talking crap about milking it. And they bring Charmed back. But I have to tell you, thoroughly enjoying it. It's literally the same show, except for these, the Charmed ones and all that kind of stuff. But they're so cute and sexy, and it's funny, and I like it.
It completely is. And Paramount's doing a really smart thing here. And what they're doing is they're releasing the original Charmed on Blu-ray, which it never was before, at the same time that they're releasing the new Charmed on DVD. So they're working the franchise in a very, very smart way so that the people who are new to it, watching the new show, and I got season 3 here, which I will admit, I didn't watch season 1 or 2, watch season 3. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad. I mean, I don't know any of these actresses, but I'm okay with them. I'm fine with them. But once you watch, and that's released with season 6 and 7 of the original on Blu-ray. And no, it's got the same vibe. It definitely kind of plays to the same audience. So I think they're doing fine.
Mystical, magical girl, a little bit of girl power. I like that. I like that.
It's fine. And I love, look, I adore Rose McGowan. I really do. I know that she's unstable as can be. But you know what? Girl's got guts, man.
Yeah.
Crazy background and
had a tough life, so she earned a little bit of crazy. Nancy Drew, that's another one, right?
Yeah.
And again, I can hear the people out there now. Is this guy really? Yes, I love me some Nancy Drew. It's fantastic. Everybody's so cute and sexy. It's mystical and magical. And he has some just fun stuff in there. And I love the way they've sort of mixed it all up. In this Nancy Drew, at first I thought it was going to be what was the other one? Veronica Mars. Which is straightforward. But Nancy Drew is mystical and magical.
Well, let me tell you, I have had to review all of the attempted reboots of Nancy Drew in the movies, and there was the one with Emma Roberts.
Oh yeah,
not so great. Then there was another one recently with what's her name from Stranger Things.
Yeah,
and that wasn't so great.
Millie
Bobby Brown.
Yeah,
and that wasn't so great either. And I was trying to wrap my head around it, and I think I may have said this on radio as well. But that it's like the whole point of Nancy Drew is not the mystery; it is the mysteries.
Yes.
It's a TV thing.
Yeah.
It's about the fact that she keeps doing it and she keeps getting better. And it's the growth through doing. It's not that this is about a girl who solves a mystery. You're never going to get a film series based on this.
No.
But a TV series, yes, and it's well cast, it's well written, and I think they've nailed it this time. It's the first time since Pamela Sue Martin, right? That we've got it on TV. Yeah, I'm all into it.
That's the first time I've heard the word Pamela Sue Martin, and certainly it would come from you.
Well, speaking of Pamela Sue Martin, who was on the original Dynasty for a minute, let's move to Dynasty season 4.
There you go. Yeah, and they all have the same names, the character names, Blake and all that kind of stuff. But the real boss of the show isn't so much Blake as it is his daughter, and Crystal, and it's kind of fun, fun.
Yeah, I agree. And, the original Dynasty went off the rails when they spun it off into the Carringtons.
Oh, yeah.
And they stuck Charlton Heston on that show for some unknown reason. And then like at the end of the first or second season, there's a UFO abduction. I remember watching that and thinking, you're really just, now you hate the audience.
Yeah.
Now you are just purely ridiculing the audience. You're daring us. This is an act of hostility, and I'm not going to watch your stupid show anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something to all of this. I will say though that other shows which have kind of raised the bar on this and have borrowed from the format, Empire being the most successful and recent one, really do kind of force them to step it up. I didn't think that the first reboot of Dallas was that great, and then Larry Hagman went and died, and kind of sent that into a tailspin. But this feels a little more solid. Feels like they got a little more of a handle on it. So.
Yeah. Well, it's not not the original Dynasty was serious. Dynasty, Falcon Crest, Dallas. They weren't serious, but they fancied themselves as dramas.
Yeah.
I'll put it like that. This show does not fancy itself as a drama. It's not a sitcom or anything, but those CW shows live in a fairly nebulous spot, where you can't take any of them seriously, even if nothing mystical or magical is going on. And because you can't take any of them seriously, I think is why I probably like it. They don't take themselves seriously, and you don't have to either.
So we got season 2 of a few other things on Showtime real fast. Berlin Station season 2, excuse me, which is which is an okay show. I think it's I think in light of what's happening right now in Europe, it's a little bit hard to take the intrigue here seriously. The L Word Generation Q kind of it feels also a little bit
back to the well, man. Back to the well. You know.
Yeah, they keep going back, and this feels like it's sort of past its prime. I think the L Word the first time around made more sense. Work in Progress, also season 2. I don't really quite get the whole point of this. I think it this goes a little bit to something that I'm going to be saying about a different movie on radio this week. But if you're going to have a show that is sort of gay themed, which this one is. This is about she's this aging lesbian and all of the issues that she encounters. Don't traffic in gay stereotypes to such a degree that you're going to alienate everyone. Because people who are too conservative are going to be like, I'm not watching that show. And people who are very, very liberal are going to watch it and they're going to be like, oh, that's just bigoted. It's just filled with stereotypes. Like you've literally alienated everybody. Pick a side. And if you can't pick a side, don't make it.
Well, what you have to do, I think, is build a show that reflects the reality of the diversity of both character and the community. Look, my some of my gayest friends, and I have a lot of gay friends, are the machoest motherfuckers you've ever met in your life.
Dude, you listen to Film Week this week. You will hear me go off.
I'm telling you,
you will hear me go off. You will hear me go off. We'll talk about it after the show.
All right, we'll talk about that. Yeah, okay.
And then there's the Showtime documentary series Buried, which I found incredibly creepy. Real crime stuff, which they do a lot of on Netflix.
Yeah,
really kind of gets under my skin at a certain point.
I don't like it at all, but anyway.
Yeah. But the crime here and the trial that it details is interesting if you have the stomach for it, but I just don't anymore. I'm getting too old for that stuff.
Yeah.
A couple of vintage TV things I want to make mention of. The O. Henry Playhouse, the complete series from Classic Flicks, is now in volume 2, and a lot of wonderful stuff here. I mean, really, really wonderful stuff. O. Henry's real name, for those who may have not studied in school, was William Porter, but O. Henry is just better for writing short stories, especially the ones that we all know so well. And this is back when they would do, plays for television or adaptations of short stories for television. And there are a lot of amazing actors in this, really great directors. You're just going to see a lot of your favorite character actors show up here when they're a lot younger. And it's really, really fun. Tommy Kirk and Chuck Connors and, William Shallert shows up here. Really, really fun stuff. So
what I always loved about all the Porter O. Henry stuff. Porter spent a goodly amount of time in jail, which is where he developed his writing skill. And if you read a lot of those O. Henry stories, a lot of them are jailbird stories. And the protagonist is somebody who's in jail or just got out of jail. It's really, really sort of interesting. So and because of that, because prisons aren't segregated, O. Henry's stories are incredibly diverse. Because in jail, everybody's there, and that's just interesting that the guy writing that long ago wrote all of these diverse stories. Because jail's jail. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. That's a good point. And then we also have the complete collection of Honeymooners specials, finally from MPI on a single disc set. And they've released these previously, but they were all kind of scattered. There's the second honeymoon set, the Valentine special, and then a couple of Christmas specials, including a Jackie Gleason version of A Christmas Carol. And so they're all together on one set now, and they're just absolutely wonderful, full color. This is kind of the resurrection of the show, long after their original black and white episodes had aired. This is kind of 1970s, I think early 1970s when they were doing these, maybe late, 76 to 78.
Yeah.
So it's really, really fun stuff, and it's well worth checking out. So the Honeymooners specials, Jackie Gleason, you can do no wrong. Tim, why don't we talk about some of these box sets we had hoped to have for Christmas, and where our supply chain is back in order. So there's some really interesting stuff here. First, the Andy Griffith Show finally on Blu-ray. Has been on DVD for a million years. It's finally out now from Paramount on Blu-ray. And I, for one, could not be happier. This show makes me freaking happy.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Well, well, me too. It was my wife Bridget's favorite show. This and I Love Lucy, but this too. And I used to wonder about it. I loved it too. I love where it's set and how it's set, the people, the nature of it all, its gentleness, its concerns, its family. It's all very familiar to me. I grew up, I was born in Tennessee, grew up in the Midwest, and so all that sort of Southern hospitality stuff is is great to me. But this is what I love the most about the Andy Griffith Show. It's Andy Griffith, who he is, in the context of that sheriff. Andy is a cop who walks around with no gun, don't need one, because he understands that his authority doesn't come from the sidearm. His authority comes from who he is. If every cop in America engaged policing, I know we live in not 1950, whenever the hell the Andy Griffith Show is on, but with that same attitude, gun or no gun, the attitude is what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
Now, but who do they give the gun? Barney.
Yeah.
Barney has the gun, the most dangerous, and one bullet. The most dangerous person in Mayberry has the one gun and the one bullet, and that is something that I came to understand was what I loved about that show, and that I wish all of policing engaged it as the Andy Griffith Show does. It's
Let
wonderful.
me tell you something. We got a new sheriff's captain over here.
Oh, and the boot.
Yeah, and that guy has reached out and said, "I'm the new guy. Some of you might remember when I was there before I was, but I wasn't running the station. I'd like to come out and meet everybody. And there's going to be an open house next week at a neighbor's house where he's going to come and he's going to talk to everybody, and everybody's going to talk to him, which I think is the most wonderful thing in the world. And it means that you're gonna have the bat phone. You're gonna have that number to him if you need to call him personally on his cell phone and the whole thing." There is something great about having that relationship. The show ran for 8 years, from 1960 to 68. And what I love, dude, this is why you and I are made from the same DNA. So if we're in a room and I say to the room, I'm like, did all of you know that Gomer Pyle's cousin stayed in Mayberry and he was a mechanic? The first person who goes, "Yes, Goober." That's Tim.
Oh,
Tim is the guy. Yep. Tim's the first guy who would know that piece of trivia. First person. But I will say this too: seeing Ron Howard as a little kid is also a lot of fun, because that guy has had the most charmed life, and I begrudge him none of it. I mean, he was a star from the time he was a kid. He was a star as a teenager, and then he became an adult filmmaker, and he won an Academy Award, and he had a wonderful family. And I don't. It's like the worst thing that's ever happened to him is he went bald.
Hey, but you know what? It's also true about Ron, and you and I have been following Ron around professionally, for more than 30 years. You never heard one word of schmack about Ron Howard. Never. I've interviewed Ron Howard 25, 30 times for 25, 30 movies. Yeah, I've never seen, never heard, never understood there to be anything, nothing. It's just Ron Howard. And I got to tell you, I think that is because that's who he is.
Yep.
And a good guy, sometimes a good guy gets what he's got coming, and Ron Howard has gotten what he's got coming.
Well, this is a wonderful set. It's on Blu-ray, and you got to upgrade if you can. I mean, it looks just perfect in HD, and it includes that fabulous and rarely seen they're home movies here. There's all kinds of wonderful stuff in the extras, but it includes that rarely seen Danny meets Andy Griffith from the Danny Thomas Show. So, that was a thing in its day. That was like the crossover that nobody ever dared imagine was possible. The original MacGyver is out in a complete collection on Blu-ray as well. The new MacGyver, you could not pay me to watch. This is 33 Blu-rays plus the all of the original episodes, 139 episodes plus 2 TV movies, and Richard Dean Anderson doing what he does best, which is just taking spit in a paper clip and somehow turning it into the coolest stuff ever. I love that MacGyver.
And you know what? I was not a original at the moment that it aired MacGyver guy. So from when to when is MacGyver? Does that?
Boy, MacGyver. I mean, I used to watch it after Monday Night Football.
Is that when it was?
That's when it was, and it aired. I want to say 85.
Oh, 80. No, yeah, it was
85
80.
to 92.
85, 92. All right. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because middle 90s, Richard Dean goes on to Stargate after that Stargate movie, and he does another 20 years of that. So I was not an original. So I came to MacGyver in reruns in the 90s and just fell in love with it. And frankly, Richard Dean Anderson, he's on my list of those guys. For one thing, Richard Dean Anderson has not been off television since whenever you said MacGyver started in 85. Yeah. He has until he retired like a couple of years ago. He did a last one or two Stargates. He's about 75 now. Yeah. But those MacGyvers run 24 hours a day, but I'd still rather have them on Blu-ray. I'm going to get it.
So here's the thing that just blew me away when this came in. So this comes in and I'm thinking, gosh, what's Andy Samberg been doing since he left SNL like 3 or 4 years ago? And then I realized, holy crap, he did 8 seasons of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
Where did that go?
Yeah.
Tim, we're old, dude.
Yeah, made 2 movies and did 8 seasons of that since SNL. And you're absolutely right. That's ridiculous.
Well, anyway, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I didn't think would go past a single season. Not because it's not funny. It's just, it's hard to sustain that level of funny.
But it is a single joke.
It is. Yes, it is.
It's just the one joke. And I couldn't, after a season, not even a season, I couldn't.
Yeah. Well, but it's still, I mean,
there it is.
There it is. You got a great supporting cast. Andy Samberg is very, very funny. Everybody around him is funny. So it's a funny show. 153 episodes in 8 years. Somehow they made that work, man. That's unreal.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, the people love it.
The original Incredible Hulk, plus 2 TV movies, 5 seasons, 80 episodes, 2 television movies. Lou Ferrigno, basically playing the Bill Bixby character after You Don't Like Me When I'm dude, I gotta say this. I'm sorry. I'm gonna blow the joke, but who cares? This is like there's a moment in Morbius. Now, I mean, if you don't know Morbius, Jared Leto, the whole thing is basically another hulky thing from Marvel Comics, right? Like it's vampires, it's Dracula meets Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in a variation on the Incredible Hulk, which is already a variation on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Tim, I swear do not see Morbius in a theater if you have to see it, because you will take your drink and you will hurl it at the screen when Jared Leto says, "You won't like me when I'm hungry." I was like, okay, see that now. That just camps the whole thing up to a level. It's like, it's a little wink at the Incredible Hulk in a way that took me right out of the movie. Don't make me hungry. You don't like me when I'm hungry. Oh, shut up.
Wasn't Jared supposed to be, we can talk about Jared in the House of Gucci, but I guess, why I bring that up. Wasn't Jared didn't he play, the Joker or the Riddler for 30 seconds in one of the?
Yes, he was the Joker he was the Joker 3 times. He was the Joker in the original Suicide Squad. He was the Joker for a minute in Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
And then he's also the Joker in the additional material that Zack Snyder shot for Zack Snyder's Justice League. He shows up at the very end in the Nightmare future flash forward sequence. Okay. Which we'll never actually see resolved.
No.
So he's been the Joker 3 times.
Okay, interesting.
And I want to apologize to our listeners that I am unbelievably ashamed that I know that.
I knew some of it. I don't, but it's just a weird thing. Now this Morbius situation, I don't know. Maybe he just has really good agents or something like that.
I don't know. But the worst part of Morbius is the way, like, for example. Oh, this is so shameless, and I hate knowing this as well. The only reason that anything from the Marvel universe, from the Marvel comic books, can be made by Columbia and Sony is under their Spider-Man contract, right? Because they have the rights to the Spider-Man character as long as they keep doing it. They have to do it every so often, so they got to keep making Spider-Man movies. And then somebody over there figured out a loophole, which was, hey, as long as somebody actually says Spider-Man, at some point in the movie, they can basically use any Marvel character they want. And that's how Venom happened. And somebody's like, well, we might want to call Spider-Man about this. And that's all they need. They just need somebody to actually say Spider-Man. And now you can make something as well. And that's how Morbius is happening. It's absolutely shameful. They apparently are going to tie it in eventually, but as long as somebody says, I think that has something to do with Spider-Man. Meanwhile, just carry on and do a movie that has nothing to do with Spider-Man. It's infuriating.
A lawyer who knows how to read a contract. We're supposed to be talking about the Incredible Hulk.
Incredible Hulk. So you won't like him when he's angry. So Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby.
Hey, look, Lou is still the only actual Incredible Hulk, incarnation of the that I've ever believed on film or in television. Yep. All of the rest of them have been CGI crap. Plus, Lou was in that movie with Bridget, and God Spoke. Lou was in that movie, and he grabs Andy Dick by the neck and
I remember that
back in 1992. So gotta love me some Lou. Made a movie.
Awesome. Well, this actually has special features, Tim. It actually has bonus material. There are introductions with Lou Ferrigno and Kenneth Johnson. Love me, Kenneth Johnson, one of the great producers and television icons of that era. Also integrally involved in the $6 Million Man. Remembering the Incredible Hulk, an American classic, great little documentary bit, as well as Behind the Success, the story of it, gag reel, ton of commentaries. really actually a lot of fun to revisit this show, and it's on Blu-ray and it looks beautiful. They remastered that whole damn show, shot on film in high def, and it's great.
You know why the Incredible Hulk worked in it today, and people who get that set and watch this today, watch Bill Bixby.
Yep.
Bill Bixby played it completely and totally straight and for drama. And he's wonderful in the Incredible
he's
Hulk.
so good.
The goofy stuff happens, and here comes Lou. But all of the stuff that's Bill Bixby in anguish, or trying to save the baby, or trying to every time he has to change into the Incredible Hulk, he nails that every time. He was a really, really good actor.
Yeah, he was. And you saw that Bill Bixby had a really interesting TV career, and I'm so sorry we lost him prematurely. But he went from being an amazing physical and slapstick character actor on My Favorite Martian, basically doing his impression of Larry Hagman on I Dream of Jeannie, who was already doing a little bit of Dick York, what he was doing on Bewitched. Like, they kind of all transferred, they all borrowed from each other. They're all doing the same kind of guy, which is the person who's attached to the magical person who has to keep them a secret. Yeah. And you got to do a lot of slapstick. They're all variations on a theme. And then he went from that to Courtship of Eddie's Father, which was, an adaptation of a Vincent Minnelli film. And suddenly you're like, oh, this guy's got chops. He's not just a goofball. And then he shows up in The Incredible Hulk, which is all pulp.
The Magician. Oh,
The Magician. You're right.
The Magician was right before The Incredible Hulk. Yeah.
Right. So Bixby's real, man. He was the real deal. Wonderful actor. We got the complete set of Vikings. All 6 seasons here. They brought it to a merciful end at a certain point. I watched, I think, maybe 3 of these, like 1, and then I watched a couple other seasons because my ancestor, the first Duke of Normandy, wound up on this thing as a character, and I'm like, oh, now I'm invested. I got to see how they depict Rollo, the first Duke of Normandy. Now, the goofy thing about me, I've always been so proud. I'm descended from the first Duke of Normandy, who was a Norwegian Viking who commanded a Danish fleet. What about you? Well, it turns out something like 25 million people are all descended from Rollo, so it ain't special. Looked into my wife's genealogy. She's descended from him, too. I'm descended from him like 9 different ways. Tim, I kid you not, you're descended from him.
Oh, it's almost
guaranteed. It's just like these family lines just all keep connecting. So anyway, that was very unremarkable. But 89 episodes and 27 discs, a show that has absolutely nothing to do with Vikings whatsoever, because Gabriel Byrne is in the first season of this thing, which made no sense. And anyway, it eventually was just a bunch of guys in mohawks with swords and shields, pretending to be Vikings, which a lot of blood and a lot of swords. I am, however, looking forward to the new Edgar what's his name movie.
Edgar Wright.
The guy did the Lighthouse.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, his new Viking movie looks brutal. It looks absolutely just sick and wrong and horrific. He did the
Robert Eggers.
Robert Eggers. Thank you. I'll remember his name when he becomes better. His movies just freak me out a little bit. And then last on the TV front, before we kind of start to wrap this show up, Tim, they finally put Magnum PI out on Blu-ray, and I do not mean the new Magnum PI. I mean my Magnum, my Tom Selleck Magnum is on Blu-ray, complete series. I could not be happier. It's been out overseas on Blu-ray for a few years. It's finally out here. And thank you, Mill Creek. This is just such a godsend. This show still holds up, man. It still holds up. I know, again, it's like the Gomer Goober thing. If I meet somebody where I say to them, "Hey, Ivan, did you see the sunrise?" and they smile back at me, I know. Kindred spirit, man.
Oh man, that was just such a heavy episode. And it's just Donald P. Belisario and Glenn Larson, of course. And,
yeah.
and it was just like it was the perfect balance of a certain kind of humor and male camaraderie. Tom and Hillman and Roger and male camaraderie, all that kind of perfect balance of all of that, and in seriousness, like these cases that Magnum would get would sometimes be these really, really serious cases. And then this wonderful through line that involved, their service in Vietnam and things that happened in Vietnam and all the way bringing us all the way up to that. Hey, Ivan.
Yep. And it got surreal later on, where his deceased buddy is showing up as kind of a ghost mentoring him. They took some real narrative chances in those later seasons. Yeah. And all of the sinews of this show, is Robin real? Is he not real? Orson Welles being the voice, a couple of times. This mysterious author figure who owns the estate but never shows up on the show. I mean, there are a lot of really cool tidbits to it. The Ferrari, but it really is the camaraderie between those three guys. With Roger E. Mosley and Larry Manetti as TC and Rick, that they are Vietnam buddies. Yeah. And they've stuck together all this time. And that really is amazing. I first saw Larry Manetti, I think like the year before Magnum. He was on a short-lived show called The Duke, which was this Robert Conrad show. This show in Chicago, where, it's like, I still remember the theme to it. Isn't that weird? Robert Conrad's an ex-boxer turned private eye, and Larry Manetti's kind of playing the same thing that he does here. But man, it just clicked for everybody on this show. And there's one episode in particular that I really, really enjoyed, which is where Anne Lockhart and June Lockhart play the same character, where it's June Lockhart hires him, and in the flashbacks, Anne, her daughter, is playing June as her younger self.
I love that.
Really, and I thought that is so smart and so beautiful that you pull that stunt. It's stunt casting, but I love it. Yeah. So anyway, Magnum PI on Blu-ray, a lot of good extras on here as well. There are new interviews with Mike Post and with many of the filmmakers. There are also two episodes from the Rockford Files featuring Tom Selleck as the character that inspired them to do Magnum. Put him up. Really puts him up. Fabulous, just fabulous. Tom Selleck was so good. So you don't need to go get the Rockford Files to have those episodes. They're on here. And then there's audio commentaries and featurettes and more. It's a lot of fun. It's an awful lot of fun.
Yeah.
So let's see. Before we wrap everything up, let's hit just a couple of these BBC titles here, which I think there's some of these are really worth mentioning. To the Manor Born, the complete collection, is a lot of fun. Penelope Keith and Peter Bowles. This is the silver anniversary edition to this absolutely classic series that kind of foreshadows a lot of other British kind of romance series, like there's a whole bunch of them. But this is really quite nice, and it's the way that they depict this very, very upper crust aristocratic relationship is also kind of gently poking at the British class system. And, I think it's a really sharp show. And this from the 1970s, 20 original episodes, ran for 3 seasons, and it's absolutely wonderful. So I gotta believe
this is Peter Spence, as you said, and I gotta believe that Julian Fellows. In the late 70s was it's just you get informed by these things, but upstairs, downstairs, and all that kind of stuff. But I have to believe it. In the late 70s, I used to watch that show. Yeah, it's great.
And then we get season 24 of Silent Witness, believe it or not. I don't know why this isn't sort of more famous here, but 24. I don't know what you say about something that's been on the air that long. It's like second only to Doctor Who, I think, probably in the UK. So as far as these particular procedural shows go, this one's top notch, and it continues to be top notch. And Amelia Fox is absolutely wonderful. Should be doing features, but nonetheless, really, really good on here. Better than Law and Order. And I'm not dissing Law and Order, but it's better than Law and Order.
Yeah, this forensic. What was that show? Bones.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Bones.
A little bit more, yeah, like Bones. Yeah,
yeah, a little bit like that. All right, well, Tim, that's it. We're going to be gone for spring break, so you have an absolutely wonderful time the next few weeks. We'll reconnect in hopefully a better world where we've put the Oscar nonsense behind us. We have no idea what the Academy is going to do to discipline Will Smith, if at all. Something will likely be done. Yeah. The rumor is there are certain governors who feel like really drastic action has to be taken to preserve the Academy's integrity. And we will see.
Yeah, the Academy has to be careful with all that, man. Look, Polanski's still walking around here. Just be careful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought that they were way too hasty in the way they rewrote the bylaws after Harvey and Cosby. That they were like, oh, we got to get rid of these guys. These guys are going to tarnish us. Well, they wrote these bylaws in a way that allowed them to eject people after the fact. So that sort of violates American jurisprudence. Now, again, it's a private organization. They can do what they want. American jurisprudence is, if I did something and then you pass a law tomorrow that says it's a crime, you can't arrest me after the fact for committing the crime. Yeah. It was not a crime yesterday. So ejecting Polanski was a low blow, especially decades after the fact. Cosby and Harvey kind of on the bubble. It was sort of in that moment, but they realized they didn't have a morals clause, and they wrote it really, really broadly to be able to do what they wanted. And now I think they face the dilemma of, holy crap, we may wind up having to kick a lot of people out of the Academy for otherwise negligible or forgivable offenses. And I don't think you want to start doing that either. You
got to be careful, man. I'm just saying. Does Woody stay in the Academy? Woody Allen. I mean, by their measure, to me, of course, he's in the Academy. But what counts? What's the equivalent or worse than the karate chop to the neck? Because I got to tell you, if you're going around, anyway, whatever. Just be careful. Yeah. Is all I have to say. And to me, the most effective thing to do would be to do nothing and ignore him forever. That's what I would do. I would just say, we're not doing anything. We're done. And we will not be talking about that anymore. Sometimes you stop talking about a thing, it goes away all by itself.
And I'll tell you something. Having that experience, just if you have kids in school, you very quickly realize that kids will leave a thing alone and it goes away. It's the parents who don't like to leave it alone, and there's a lot of wisdom in that. Sometimes you learn from the kids.
Outstanding, brother.
All right, Tim. We'll catch up in a few weeks.
Good.